sectors they're looking at. What criteria will you look at in terms of acquisition? Are you going to buy 50 million shilling properties, or will you say you're only going to buy properties that are above $1 billion? Are they going to be in Nairobi? Are they going to be residential? Whatnot? All that is governed within the investment and acquisition policy. And then again, how will the properties be acquired? Then you have your sale and purchase agreements. So again, we look at the REIT structure, we look at all the relationships, and then we see that they're either supported by reports, expert opinions, or policies. When we come to unit holders, again, we ask, how will the unit holders' interests be taken care of within the REIT? We look at the statutory and general information that's captured in the offering memorandum, and then also that relationship is captured in the trust deeds. How can unit holders subscribe for units in the REIT? Again, you're looking at your application and then your allocation policy. We've been told that for D-REITs, the minimum now is 100,000. But perhaps as a REIT manager, you want to have a higher minimum. So what will that be? Again, that's going to be captured in your allocation and application policy. How will unit holders understand the financial performance of the REIT? We'll have to have performance statements by the reporting accountant, and then there are going to be projections done by the REIT manager, which are again captured in the offering memorandum. And then again, what about risks? Again, the offering memorandum will have to discuss what risk factors are you dealing with. And these risk factors could be regulatory, they could be environmental, health, those type of things are captured in the offering memorandum. And then of course, the offering memorandum has to talk about who are the key players. Who is going to be the promoter, who's the REIT manager, trustee, valuer. So we have the profiles of all these players in the offering memorandum. There you look at who the key personnel is, what history do they have, do they actually know what they're doing, and then also description of the roles. And then we talk about what are the responsibilities of all these different players, such as the REIT manager, trustee, and so on. How do we know that the unit holders will be sure that these guys are doing the correct job? So again, we talk about the REIT manager agreement, which is an agreement between the trustee and the REIT manager for the trust. You talk about the trust deed, you've also got the property manager agreement, and then you've got the governance structures. So all these are things that will come into the offering memorandum. And if we just take a step back, again, we're just saying that the offering memorandum is going to document and disclose everything within this structure. So again, you can start seeing why it's very documentation heavy, and why sometimes in terms of preparation, it takes a bit longer than perhaps doing a regular corporate bond or even an IPO as well. So I just touched on a few inputs for the offering memorandum, but this is basically what your table of contents will look like in the offering memorandum. So there are quite a few sections, but you have your important notices and statements. So this is a requirement from CMA. You've also got the salient features of the transaction, because sometimes these documents can be 200, 300 pages. So we have a section where we give a snapshot of what the features are. Glossary of terms, timetable of important events, particularly if there's an offer period as well. Corporate information, this talks about who the different service providers are, who the REIT manager is, and so on. So it has their contact details. Key features of the offer, particulars of the REIT. So this outlines details about the trustee, the REIT manager, eligible properties, things like that. Economic overview, real estate overview, and so on. So all of this is, I would say it's a table of contents, and then we develop each and every section into a bit more detail. One of the things I'll point out is that at the end, the service providers do have to provide their financial statements. So you find that the promoter's financial statements are included, and the idea is that the promoter needs to have enough financial muscle to sort of sponsor the REIT, but you also want to make sure that the promoter actually is a real entity. It's not somebody who's sort of like a briefcase company that has just set up, because there are some responsibilities that the promoter has. The same for the REIT manager, the financial statements have to be disclosed. The trustees' financial statements have to be disclosed as well, because the trustees is the one who's going to be holding the assets. So you don't want somebody who has asset base of $1 million and then they're holding assets worth 5-10 billion, and that's who you're trusting. So that's some of the rationale. And then the property manager's financial statements as well are included. So this, take it as a table of contents. And then basically when you come to the tool that is in the incubator, What the tool has done is expanded what is in the table of contents and given you subsections as well. So each and every aspect here has to be disclosed or outlined in the offering memorandum. Some of it is a sentence, it can be a paragraph, some of it can actually be a couple of pages as well. But you now have a very detailed table of contents. So as you're developing your offering memorandum or your transaction advisor is doing that, they can take this as a guide, and then maybe there might be some changes here and there, but at least in the toolkit, you'll be able to extract this tool and then use it to sort of benchmark against perhaps existing OMs or basically what you want to do, and then you can see what is relevant to you and what is not relevant to you. So so we have a toolkit for the iREIT and then the DREIT. The DREIT has a few differences, but I've just put the one for the iREIT. So in conclusion, basically I think what you need to take away is that the offering memorandum is there to document and provide disclosures about your REIT structure. So everything in your REIT structure has to be captured in your OM. Your OM is also a legal document, so when you go out to market, that's what people will reference. And even years down the line, you know, sometimes an investor comes up and says, oh, you never told, you're in residential, but now you're investing in data centers, you never told me you're going to do this. You can point to the OM and say, actually, this is disclosed in investment policy that we can invest up to 10% in such assets. So it's actually a document that covers the REIT manager and also covers the promoter as well. So again, it's important to spend time thinking about the REIT structure as you look to develop the offering memorandum, and then its content will have to align with the REIT regulations, and then there are also checklists to guide you on what's required. And then when you submit the offering memorandum to CMA, you have to accompany the offering memorandum with a checklist as well. So that just guides you what's required as part of the application process. So sorry I rushed that, but that's sort of an overview of what you need for an offering memorandum. Thank you.
I represent a capital allocator or a fund manager, and in the room I'm honored to have some of the capital owners that we represent, and I'm sure they'll hold me to account on this as I just provide a brief snippet of the investment proposition of why pension schemes would look at REITs. I believe a good level of context has been given by the recent panel, specifically on our capable CEO of the Fund Managers Association, just to give a backdrop of why REITs are considered within the portfolio of pension schemes. So I believe, as he's rightfully said, we've had 2 years of relatively low return. As much as the context of high interest rates are still compelling, they've not really provided equal value from members, and which I believe a couple of you or a number of you are affiliated to pension schemes yourselves. We've not seen good returns, and so really the case of diversification and thinking around alternatives has come to play from that end. So from that end, I believe the clear context is the investment proposition is there. One, for diversification. A pension scheme generally is created to provide inflationary and risk-adjusted return over the long term. And when I talk about long term, this is 10 to 20 years, which is quite some time. And I believe REITs within the structure they fall under, which is real estate, provide a capable position to provide that return. A lot of things has been said around why REITs, as we look at, as we compare it to the traditional way of investing real estate. It is liquid, meaning you can get in, you can build that ticket size, even as a pension scheme that is starting off and growing in contributions. It is regulated. We've had around the CMA, the NSC, and how the rigorous process in which they take REITs to incubate and equally to launch in the market. So pension schemes and investors at large can have comfort around how that asset class or investment is looked at. We've talked about diversification and tax efficiency, especially from a structure level. Pension schemes, to a large extent, are tax exempt, but definitely the structure in which they are put in is also quite considerable as they're thinking around the cost. at the end of the day. Of course, the potential risks, and this is something we look at when you're looking at the structure and what or how REITs can engage with the institutional investors when they're engaging, is around the risks that they would still carry given they still are under the property sector. So we've just provided a sort of engagement journey of how REITs can then engage with these investors from the very start of the design process. A lot has been said around, how setting up a structure, how to then look at the legal entity, the information memorandum, look at property managers, and basically the service providers that you consider when you're setting up this REIT. But I don't believe enough has been said around these REITs or the REIT issuers then engaging from the get-go or from the onset with the investor base they're looking to get. So from this end, I believe the design stage, or what we look at as feasibility, is a very critical stage where REIT issuers can understand the investment and risk objectives of institutional investors or pension schemes at this case, understand what is the investment objective, getting a steady inflationary adjusted return, what are their risk profiles, what period of time do they have to invest, and does that align to the yields, does that align to the risk of this particular structure. So that is a very key stage to then begin that process. And also it allows the engagement process, and especially capital raising, which is the other one we look at, that's the third one, to be a bit more seamless and actually quite faster for you to then, begin to build up a good level of capital, especially from this particular industry. And then, of course, the last one that I'll touch on too is the reporting and evaluation. And I guess from that end, it's really to highlight that just like all the other regulated assets that a pension scheme would ideally invest in, that's equities, offshore, and even fixed income to a large extent, there are reporting requirements, there are engagements that are necessary for the pension trustees and secretariats to have comfort that they're actually reviewing the assets that their members would then get value from over that period of time. Again, I'll really just touch from a high level because I believe a number of these factors and matrices have been looked into. So in the design stage, I believe the vehicle structure is quite key. So looking at the cost efficiency, am I getting value from a net yield return? Has the issuer aligned to the objectives of a pension scheme or the investors at the end of the day? Are they capable to provide the proof of concept? Have they looked at the case of the sector they're looking at? And I believe a number of the contenders that we just had have given a big scope of that in terms of a case study. Within that context, do they have scale to build a sustainable and a long-term structure that provides return not just for 5 years, but 10 years, or as long as the structure is within the pension investment? So that would be it on the design. On the fundraising, which is another critical area, so they have gotten the regulation go ahead and they are in the market. So from that end, I believe is the element where that the investor or pension schemes typically get comfort by seeing that the actual issuer has skin in the game. And this skin in the game is sufficient enough to then raise just a minimum threshold for the structure to actually hit the ground running, or just start developing and deploying this money to actually earn the return. And what we've seen with the existing issuers is they have, to a large extent, strategic investments or strategic investor or an anchor investor who would then propel them from a capital perspective and equally from a technical expertise. So those are things we actually look at. We also look at the aspect of the investment threshold. So they have a target size, and that target size ideally is what would be sufficient for them to start the project and the return that they need. So from that extent, does that minimum, can they actually raise that investment amount? Or will they get to the stage where they don't meet that requirement, and even if the investor or the pension had actually invested, that investment does not, see the light at the end of the day. So that's some of the things that then you want to consider from that end. Of course, there's the element of debt and equity and the extent to which the debt capacity, sustains the equity return, which is what the underlying investor would be keen to consider. I think I've also reiterated about just making sure that, first of all, the governance and the management is aligned to report to its investors on a quarterly basis, or rather on semi-annual, if not quarterly basis, and also engage the capital owners at the end of the day, because I think it was said this morning, the aspect of scale does not come from one 5 million ticket size. It actually comes from building the trust that you are committed to execute the project and report back, because that builds confidence for these capital owners to provide you perpetual capacity to get this equity at the end of the day, because you really want to build on that scale. You want to commit to reporting, to availing, changes in the event they happen within your board or management, to also be accountable to measure the target returns that you had intended to provide at the end of the day. So those are things that we look into. I believe we are proud to say as Sanlam we have walked the journey with these capital owners, pension schemes in precise, to take them through one of the existing REITs in the market. And these are the things that they look into. And the discussion, I believe, is deepened by such interactions where we are all in the room and we are able to tackle on some of the issues that we feel over time could be addressed, especially the aspect of liquidity. And as I conclude, I believe I've reiterated that the structure is very key. We've had about the discussions on sustainability, efficiency, meeting your return, and being able to scale it to provide members return on a long-term basis, enforcing that engagement from the get-go. As you're talking to your to the CMA or the regulators, you're looking for legal expertise. You also want to have in mind the investor profile that you want to engage, and especially if it's the pension scheme, and start that discussion earlier on to make sure that your needs are aligned. So I believe also the engagement that we're having today is quite vital in not just availing information, but equally deepening the market so that different entities, given that we need the synergies, can coexist to create and add more value to this sector. Thank you.